Thanks for more football. The Cowboys coming to life in the second half to win this one 28-20 after trailing 13-7 at halftime. Scored 21 unanswered before giving up a late touchdown that did change some money in terms of where that money fell. Over is the winning ticket with that late touchdown by the Giants, and the Giants do cover that 10 they were catching with the late TD as well. So money moving here on the holiday. Dak Prescott really a tale of two halves here as well. 21-30 for 261, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions that might cause some concerns there in the first half. But it was Dallas getting it done on the ground, led by Zeke this time around, 92 on the ground with a rushing touchdown as well. Hey, it's Emery Hunt and Tyler Sullivan back in the mix to break this one down, guys. Taking a look at this final score doesn't really tell the whole story here, and I want to delve into some of it. But coming off of a commanding win over the Vikings a week ago, 4 days removed from that, Dallas kind of sleepwalks through the first 30 here, but then really turns it on in the second half. Tyler, what did that tell you about this team right now?
Yeah, I was concerned, obviously, when we saw it from the Cowboys in that first half, because there's always been that little trait about them of them downplaying to competition, kind of not playing to their ceiling and bringing this down to a lackluster play, which opens the door for inferior teams to beat them. I thought that's kind of where we were for a second here against New York. We were there in that first half. Reminded me a lot of that Green Bay game, if we're being honest. But ultimately, they were able to turn things on in the second half, really utilize the tight ends with Dalton Schultz getting a couple of touchdowns, getting some big plays from CD Lamb, and the defense really started to get home. I think they realized that, hey, listen, this team, the New York Giants, they're banged up. They're not particularly playing at a high efficient football right now because of the injuries, particularly in the secondary. Let's throw it around the field. Let's test this thing deep. They're down a number of starting cornerbacks. Let's see if we can get CD Lamb on one-on-one coverage. And he rewarded them with one-handed catches after another. And obviously the tight ends were doing the same thing. 3 touchdowns for the position unit in that second half. It is the Cowboys playing to their ceiling. It's something that we haven't seen a lot this season, but now with a healthy Dak Prescott, as they keep getting further and further down the line this season, and who knows, maybe they add Odell Beckham down the line, but this team is as talented as anyone in the NFC, and you saw that in the second half.
Yeah, that's what happens when you play with your food, right? You can almost not finish it or find yourself having a bad day. I thought that's what happened in the first half, but you saw great adjustments by this Cowboys coaching staff in the second half, and the adjustments they were making, they kept the backs in to help protect versus the blitz, which allowed one-on-one coverage to really fester on the back end. And again, when you have a guy that's as versatile, scheme diverse, and position diverse as CD Lamb is, can play on the outside, can play on the inside, hey, put him on the inside, let him work one-on-one, have all that space to work with, beat the blitz, he's going to win one-on-one coverage every time. It also helped out that offensive line, and those tight ends, to Tyler's point, we're able to have that success because we know tight ends are usually the responsibility of either those outside backers or those safeties. And those guys are blitzing. That's how you calm the pressure. You get those guys out in the pattern. You can either have to abandon blitz or you're going to die like you did, that death you did earlier in the third quarter when those guys was hitting those one-on-one options deeper down the field. So it was the adjustments by Dallas, a game Giants football team, but I thought this was more on the coaching staff really trying to hone it in the second half. It's not going for the blowout in the first half. That's why they had those 2 turnovers. I thought they were pressing a lot in that first half.
I know we are picking apart a win here, and more specifically 10 consecutive wins for Dak against the New York Giants. Dominance, and when you take a look at the final stat line, it's one that I think we can live with. 261 on 21 of 32 touchdowns, but the 2 interceptions. Tyler, as you sort of take stock of where this Cowboys team is, what they maybe can be here in the weeks and months to come, that ceiling, for them to reach it, Dak's got to be better than he was, and you're not going to get away with those 30 minutes of football come crunch time in January. Did this performance raise any concerns for you, Dak giving the ball away early?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, anytime the quarterback is giving the ball to the opposition, you got to be concerned. And it's not just this game. He's had over 1 interception in each of his last, I believe it's 5 games now. He has been turning over the ball a little bit too much for comfort here. And the New York Giants, they're not talented enough as they're currently constructed because of injuries, because of things on the roster, to make him fully pay. You look at what happened in that first half even. You know, an interception. Right after the interception, the New York Giants go 3 and out on that first one. Then all of a sudden he throws another interception later on in the game. You're only giving up a field goal. They really didn't fully pay for Dak Prescott's interceptions. If you go up against a better team, a Philadelphia team maybe as you go further through the year, even a Tampa Bay team, if they're starting to cook on all cylinders, years. Those are the types of offenses that can make you pay, and that's all of a sudden 14-point swings as opposed to a 3-point swing that we saw off those 2 turnovers today.
I think it's fair to say that right now the New York Giants are ahead of schedule and maybe what the expectation was this season, but they have come back to earth over this last month. Losers in 3 of their last 4. That only win came against the Texans. Emery, I'll let you lead us off on this one. What is the measure of success right now and moving forward for the Giants? They have a head coach who I don't think is too interested in moral victories at any point in the season. What does success look like the rest of the way for New York?
Well, success to me for those guys looks like what we saw today and what we saw all throughout the season, just playing competitive ball games. You could tell the team, one, they like Coach Dayball, they play hard for him, and they love the aggressive nature. I thought they were aggressive defensively by nature with Wink Martindale, but also on offense. They're throwing for the sticks. You're seeing Daniel Jones challenge for the first down. You're seeing him more active in the run game. Saquon and those guys are all trying to score the ball when they have it in their hands. Despite the depleted roster that they have at receiver and at tight end, these guys are going out there competing. Their offensive line is competing. And I think because of that, yes, this whole year is a win. If they finish 7-11, it is still a win for this football team. I think they'll win a couple of more games, but for right now, you like the way they're headed. You like how this team makeup is. They talk about culture a lot. And this is the exact example of it. We saw this in the preseason. We saw this during training camp, and it's manifesting itself out there on the field. So you have to like where they are right now and where they're going.
Yeah, I think the number one thing in terms of your biggest takeaway macro view of the New York Giants in 2022 is that they got the coaching hire right. Brian Daboll is the right guy for the job. He is going to steer the ship in the right direction for the years to come. But if we're specifically looking at the remainder of the season here for New York, I think you're going to see a lot more losses than you're going to see wins. I think that they still make the playoffs because of that early season success, the 7 wins and all of that. But you look at the rest of the way here. Multiple division opponents. You play Philadelphia twice. The Commanders all of a sudden are starting to be a plucky team that you might even be lucky to split with as we look down the stretch here. So for me, I think they make the playoffs, but boy, that is one of the tougher schedules in the NFL. In fact, it is the toughest schedule remaining in the NFL when you look at opponent combined win percentage. So for me, it's going to come down to, can you split with the Commanders? Can you clip a Colts team that just hired Jeff Saturday, and maybe they're outperforming that now, but maybe they come back down to earth, and it really could come down to the final week of the season in Week 18 against Philadelphia in Philly. If they're already locked up with the number 1 seed or have their playoff positioning already set up to go, that could set yourself up for possibly a 10-win season if you're able to, again, win or split with Washington and beat Indianapolis. And if you get 10 wins, that almost certainly gets you into the playoffs. But big picture, I don't know if what that necessarily means. That could just be you make the playoffs and all of a sudden it's a first-round exit.
Yeah, it's a nice watermark nonetheless, and we know the Giants get into the tournament. Crazy things can happen. We'll see how it all plays out here. What we also know, and what history tells us, is that on this day, in this matchup, Odell Beckham Jr. once made an amazing catch, and this was sort of billed as the Odell sweepstakes game. Tyler, do you feel any different about those sweepstakes coming out of this result, or are you more realistic in the sense that Odell most definitely wants to go to a real contender and it's Dallas with a hand up?
Yeah, I would say that Dallas probably has the advantage here because they look more ready-made to contend for a Super Bowl. But I'll say this. I do think that what happened last year does somewhat impact Odell's decision. I do think that the fact that he already has now a Super Bowl ring on his finger with the Los Angeles Rams, that might create a little less urgency for him to join a legitimate contender. There is something to be said for going home to New York to a team that desperately needs help at wide receiver. We saw today, Dallas has CeeDee Lamb. They have Michael Gallup. They have Dalton Schultz at the tight end spot. They have Tony Pollard. They're all set. They're flush with pass catchers for Dak Prescott. He would just be a cherry on top of what they already have. I do wonder if a fully healthy Odell Beckham Jr., what he would do for New York and what that would do for his already Hall of Fame resume. If he is able to go there and really be a difference for them down the stretch, that creates a whole other narrative and a selling point that Dallas can't offer him right now.
Tyler, I feel you, but here's the thing. I'm on the other side of this whole the Odell Beckham thing. I think the clear choice is for him to go to Dallas. There's a couple of reasons why. Number one, state tax. There is none right there in Texas that helps you maximize your money. You talked about the cherry on top. That's great because we saw that be the case with the Los Angeles Rams. I think if he goes to the Giants, they're going to force him into a role where he's probably not suited to be right now, coming off of an injury, a number one role. I think he's best suited to be that cherry on top, to be that hired weapon, so to speak, within this offense. Being the third option, he's going to see some off coverage. He's going to see a lot of advantageous situations. He's going to really thrive and better for him in that scenario. And finally, he's already felt the wrath of that Giants press corps, that Giants fan base. If he drops one of Daniel Jones's low and away passes, they're going to blame Odell Beckham. They're going to blame his hair. They're going to blame him coming back to New York. They're going to say he's not focused. Man, go to Dallas and live out the rest of your days as a football player on America's team.
The sequel is often not as entertaining as the original, and we'll see how that plays out when it comes to Odell and these two teams that he's tabbed as two real players in his sweepstakes. Gentlemen, we appreciate you. Always thankful for the insights. Here's a look at some history between these two divisional foes, and these are the last times that these two teams met. Both teams 4 or more games over 500. It's only occurred 3 prior times in the last 30 seasons prior to this Thursday, and it's usually the Cowboys coming out on top. Such was the case on Thanksgiving. Still to come, might I interest anyone in some dessert? Game 3 of your Turkey Day tripleheader on tap next, and we hope you saved room for more winning picks. HQ, back in a hurry.